It is my absolute honor to let you know that on behalf of the professional.
Welcome to the Daily Faceoff Show, your everyday source for the latest news with top-notch insight and analysis. Live every weekday at noon Eastern.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Daily Faceoff Show. Today is Thursday, June 16th. I'm in Denver, home of Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. Game 2 goes on Saturday. Mike McKenna, I got to tell you, the atmosphere in Ball Arena definitely did not disappoint.
It came through the television set. Like, we're sitting in the living room with the whole family watching the game, and my kids are, man, they hardly watch hockey. They're all amped up by it. People waving the towels. Like, that atmosphere is exactly what the NHL could have hoped for, whether it was in person or on TV, because you could feel that energy, and we saw it on the ice right away as well, Frank.
Yeah, and you know what? The game lived up to the hype. I feel like so often these playoffs, that's been the case, but it's not always in life. You know, you have these expectations going in. Doesn't always do that. In this case, feels like we need to buckle up because we could be in for an unbelievable Stanley Cup Final, maybe the best in the last decade plus. Still early, but let's throw 2 minutes and 30 seconds up on the clock, and let's dive in with Game 1 from the Colorado Avalanche perspective. When you look at their start, Mike, they looked like the team that had just wrapped up their conference final series. They were right on their toes from the jump. They used their speed, and the Tampa Bay Lightning had a real tough time trying to handle the Colorado Avalanche off the rush. A lot of teams have to this point in the season and in the postseason, but John Cooper was saying after the game that they were kind of just, the Lightning were hanging on for dear life, just trying to get to that first TV timeout. That's how well the Avs came out of the gate.
I thought it was interesting hearing the Avalanche players after the game talk about how the weight of the moment to them felt pretty heavy until they really heard the crowd during warmups, and it gave them a lot of energy. And I think that played out, especially in the first 10 minutes, where it looked like Tampa Bay was trying to feel out Colorado, while Colorado was just pedal down, go, man. Like, they were moving their feet right off the bat. And, you know, what I think was really cool about Colorado's game was how, you know, Jared Bednar is willing to mix his lines up, but he's really selective in how he puts his top three guys together. When he puts Landeskog, McKinnon, Rantanen, it's not all the time, but when that team needs a little bit of energy, I think they feed off it. And getting out to the 2-0 lead was critical for the Avalanche, Frank, because they were able to, at least even when Tampa Bay came back, play with that lead, had the crowd on their side. And I think that the defense was on display for Colorado, how well they moved the puck out of their zone on breakouts to get going in transition. It was a lot for Tampa Bay to handle, especially early.
Yeah, Andre Burakovsky gets the OT winner just a minute and 20 seconds into the overtime frame. And when you take a look at just all the different guns that Jared Bednar has at his disposal, Burakovsky, for instance, you know, it's crazy to think back to another point. It feels like in this season where he was on the list of a guy that's a healthy scratch, and to see the game that Valeri Nichushkin had and some other guys that have really stepped up, even though Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar had great nights.
Yeah, and I think by the third period, you started to see it ramp again for Colorado, because they do lose their game a little bit in the second, and Tampa pushed hard. Tampa's forecheck was better. They pressured pucks harder. And you can see why this should and will be a close series, because Tampa Bay doesn't go away, man. Like, you're not going to push this team off the ledge and see them quit. You know, even with a couple of early goals against, you know, Tampa Bay still manages to come back. One fact, though, that I found really interesting, I thought Makar was amazing. He played 28 minutes. He didn't have a single shot on goal last night. He was the only Avalanche defenseman who didn't, but I still think that he was a driving force for the offensive side for Colorado.
And you'd never know watching that game in person and up close to see how involved he was in the play. To think that he didn't have a shot on goal is kind of wild. Let's take a look at this from the Tampa Bay Lightning perspective. You mentioned they don't go away. And in some ways, I think we probably would have been talking today about what a missed opportunity it was for the Colorado Avalanche had they not gotten that OT winner with the 2-goal lead that they had. But Tampa claws their way back in, and there was a lot of criticism, Mike, to start the game about Andrei Vasilevskiy maybe not having his best start. You know, in your eyes, do you think that that's a little bit exaggerated?
Yeah, I do. And there's three parts to this, Frank. First, the eye test wasn't great because the first two goals against from Landeskog and from Nichushkin were shots that looked like they were savable. And if they had gone in clean, absolutely they would have been bad goals against. And it's the fact that they happen a minute and 36 seconds apart that factors in. And also knowing that Vasilevskiy had a tough start in the Toronto and the Rangers series. So all this plays into the narrative that, man, another tough start for Vasilevskiy. I will push back on that really hard. The first goal against Ryan McDonagh crosses his sight line right as the shot's coming off Landeskog's stick. He can handle Chernik up high. He can see around that. But when you have someone going across in front of you and you can't see the release of the puck, you're guessing. And in this instance, as quickly as McDonagh crosses, man, I don't see how Vasilevsky's supposed to get his eyes on it and make this save. It's got to hit him. You can see his delayed reaction. And then I think on the second goal against with Nichushkin, it goes off Bogosian's stick in the slot. And the puck's trajectory, by the time it hits Bogosian's stick, it's already a foot in the air at the hash marks, which means to me, this shot's coming in high. It's coming in about chest height by the time it gets to Vasilevskiy. Instead, it deflects, it goes downward. Yes, it goes through him, but that's because you can't adjust in time as a goaltender. So I'm passionate about this because to me, neither of these goals were bad. They were goals that were circumstantial. His teammates were trying to do the right thing and it went bad. There's a little bit of bad luck involved with it and he recovered. And I think that's a big part of it, Frank. Like Vasilevskiy, he's not fazed by these goals against. He just rolls with it, man.
This whole Tampa Bay Lightning team really isn't fazed by much. And, you know, I think maybe it's fair to say this then, Mike, that the Tampa Bay Lightning as a whole were not crisp. That's the word that John Cooper used. You see the uncharacteristic turnover that Victor Hedman had that leads to one of those goals. And by the way, a fantastic pass and play made by Nathan McKinnon in order to make that happen. But I think Vasilevskiy probably falls in that same category. I understand exactly what you're saying. He'd probably tell you that he wasn't exactly crisp either. So Vasilevskiy got way better as the game went on. The Lightning got way better as the game went on. And by the way, both goalies allowed 3 goals on their first 15 shots in game one. It feels like in some ways there was more criticism for Kemper coming out of game one than there was for Vasilevskiy. John Cooper calling Vasilevskiy his team's best player in game one, which I also thought was interesting and certainly supports exactly what you're saying. And great job by our technical producer, Alex Allard, there to freeze the clips to show you exactly what Mike's talking about because he illustrates it so well. Mike, before game one, we had Gary Bettman and Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly speak to the media, their annual State of the League address prior to the start of the Stanley Cup Final. And in this case, not incredibly overwhelming in terms of news content. Just a few quick hits to throw at you here as we take a look at all the different things that unfolded. The 2022-23 regular season will open on October 11th. The league is going to release the regular season schedule sometime in early July. The projected revenue for this season, $5.2 billion, up from about $4.8 pre-pandemic. It is technically a record. And in this case, that means that the salary cap will increase by $1 million to $82.5 million. Still basically relatively flat. The league saying it's going to take another 2 seasons, potentially 3, for the NHL players to pay back the $1 billion debt to owners. The Stanley Cup will not be allowed to travel to Russia this summer. There are 3 players on the Tampa Bay Lightning and 1 Russian-born player on the Colorado Avalanche. They won't be allowed to celebrate with the Cup in their homeland if they win as a result of Russia's unprovoked attack on Ukraine. The NHL is still targeting February 2024 for a World Cup of Hockey. They'd like it to be in season. I believe some of those games will be played in Europe. They are sorting out the sites at the moment and remain in discussions now with the IIHF to try and get something done. And perhaps the most interesting thing for me, Mike, is Evander Kane and what's going on with contract termination grievance. I wrote a story about that today on dailyfaceoff.com. And the interesting part about it is that these two sides are playing basically a $23 million game of chicken. No one really wants the all or nothing that could come out of an arbitrator's ruling because it's binary and it's binding. It's all or nothing. Either Kane gets the full contract and the $23 million that are owed to him, and the Sharks are now back in possession of Evander Kane as a player, and he's on their salary cap in full, or the other part of that is no settlement that comes along here. Evander Kane could lose that judgment and get $0. So my guess is that neither side wants that end result and would prefer to settle. To this point, I don't think they've had any settlement talks. They don't need to go through 2 more hearings in order to come to a settlement. But this could extend out past the start date of free agency. And why that's interesting, Mike, is Evander Kane could sign a new deal, either extend with the Edmonton Oilers, sign with another team on July 13th. And through that entire process, Mike, if they go through with the arbitrator's ruling, in this case, then that new contract that Evander Kane signs will be voided. So I
can't believe that this is happening, honestly, that it's so zero sum. You know, you've only got one direction either way to go with it, and it's just the legality of it. But it's just crazy to think he went and played for the Edmonton Oilers while his contract was still up in the air, basically, you know, and get paid. And now he may get a new contract. Now he may be a San Jose Shark again, and they have to figure that out. This is a quagmire, and Kane is, by all sense of purposes, man, like should be one of the top free agents from a hockey standpoint, but this could loom large for quite some time.
Yeah, and if you root for chaos like I do, there could be plenty of chaos, as you mentioned. The NHL reiterating on Wednesday evening that Evander Kane, they view that the contract termination in their eyes was proper, that he was terminated with cause. And in that case, that does make him a free and clear pending unrestricted free agent. Can't wait to see how all of it unfolds, and also what the interest level in Kane will be like. Will someone give him some term on a contract? We'll see. Let's continue with our down and out series. We're covering off the teams that were eliminated in the Stanley Cup playoffs to take a look at where they've been and where they're heading. And today up is the Florida Panthers, Mike. When you look at their biggest offseason question, some may say, what do they do with the coach? Will Andrew Brunette be back? We have no indication to this point that he will. Kevin Weeks from ESPN reporting days ago that the Florida Panthers have fired their assistant coaches. And now moving forward, to me, I think an even bigger question than that is, what happens with Jonathan Huberdeau? Eligible to sign an extension this summer. He's Alexander Barkov's running mate. Obviously, those two guys have been in South Florida for a long time together and key pillars of their success. Huberdeau coming off a 100-point-plus season, the most assists in the league by a winger. When you look at their summer, is that the number one thing that stands out?
That's number one, and I think the coaching decisions are going to be big. Like I would like to see Andrew Brunette either get a vote of confidence, or we need some clarity here, because not us as media members,
twisting in the wind.
Like, Brunette's, yeah, dude, he's got to fill a staff. He needs to get his assistant coaches, and I talked to a longtime assistant coach last week who said, man, I don't have anything. I don't know what's going on here. This is the exact type of scenario where I think there's a lot of people waiting to see, and coaches want to get hired as soon as they can so they can get settled. And you want to get the top talent. So that's first and foremost. And then you have to decide, like, man, Barkov, Huberdeau, Bobrovsky, you can have 3 guys over $10 million on your roster. Like, that's realistic. So you got to start looking at paring money down somewhere. And, Hornquist's deal at 5.3 really stands out. Can you really live with that if you're Bill Zito? You're going to have to create cap flexibility somehow, because they only have 5 NHL defensemen on one-way contracts right now. And that's an area that needs players, man. They need D. So I'm not convinced that this is going to be a smooth offseason with the Panthers. I think they may have to move out some pieces to create some space. And I look at the pieces they'd like to bring back, man. Mason Marchment, I don't think he's going to be too expensive, but that guy, when he came out of the lineup for Florida, it sure changed for them, I thought, in playoffs. I thought he was awesome. And the biggest thing is they got to have a better power play. We've seen this, right? Like, power play is terrible in playoffs. They couldn't score. Probably a reason why McKenzie and Samuelson left, I'm guessing. So that's obviously an area of concern. But Frank, I don't see how they run it back with 3 players on those big of contracts. And I don't know how you get rid of Bobrovsky's if that's be the one that you'd look to get rid of.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me throw my hot take bit on for a second and ask you this question. Would you consider trading Spencer Knight, given that he's such a valuable piece and that you probably won't be able to trade Bobrovsky if you're trying to make your team better and Bobrovsky's locked in for the next number of years?
It's the catch-22, but no, I wouldn't trade Spencer Knight. My reasoning for that, and we talked about it yesterday, Nobody's won a Stanley Cup in forever without homegrown talent. You need young goaltenders that you can have, that can develop within, that can be there for 10 years, that are going to win you a cup. If you got to get creative with Bobrovsky's deal down the road, you got to do that somehow. But I would be very hesitant to get rid of Spencer Knight.
Very good. All right, let's get to our all 32 guests today. Let's talk about the Stanley Cup Final with Stephen Whyno. Pleased to welcome into the Daily Faceoff show Stephen Whyno, the national hockey reporter for the Associated Press. He's down at Ball Arena after Jared Bednar just spoke to the media this morning after Game 1. This segment of the All 32 is delivered by DoorDash. Steve, when you listened to Jared Bednar speak this morning, what do you think was the overall impression from the Avalanche perspective in terms of how they attacked Game 1?
They were themselves, and there's plenty of preparation about the Lightning and what they've done in previous playoff series. But this was about the Avalanche playing to their identity, and this is what Jared Bednar has said all along: is they have their 5-minute increments they play in, they have the speed they play with, and this is what they do. And he said he liked segments of the game and didn't like segments of the game, and you know where those were, where the Lightning had their pushback. But the overall kind of feeling is the Avalanche know who they are as a team, and they're not going to change a whole lot of it.
It seemed like to me that the Avalanche picked up a lot of steam through their power play last night. Obviously, one of the goals, Lekkonen's a 5-on-3, which is easier than a 5-on-4, obviously. But, I'm wondering if penalties are really going to play into the series, because Tampa spent a decent amount of time in the box this playoffs, mid-pack or so, compared to Colorado, who has not spent time there. There were 3 penalties on each side, or 3 power plays for each team last night. But do you think this is something that the coaching staff is concerned with, or is preaching to their team, is that, hey man, we have to stay out of the box if we're going to be competitive, especially on Cooper's side?
Yeah, especially, yes. And especially given how good that Colorado penalty was last night, in that, look, we know how power play can be, but this is not a situation where the Lightning want to have to rely on that to score goals. And Colorado, even though they score a goal in the power play on the 5-on-3, and you're right, they built momentum off the power play and the penalty kill in Game 1. So if you're John Cooper, you got to make sure, look, Pat Maroon can't put the puck over the glass. You can't be having some of these penalties. Look, if there are penalties of aggression where you're kind of using your physicality to, and all of a sudden a penalty, fine. But you can't have a situation where you have mistakes like Patrick Maroon's puck over the glass, because it's going to hurt them in a series like this when you've got a Nathan McKinnon playing the way he is and a Cal McCarr playing the way he is.
Steve, we covered off Andrei Vasilevsky earlier in the show, talking about his Game 1. I was really curious to see the social media reaction, particularly from Avs fans, with Darcy Kuemper and the 3 goals that he allowed. A lot of people suggesting today that Kuemper might have a short leash heading into Game 2. I was struck by Jared Bednar after Game 1 saying, look, this guy's our starter. He's been our starter all year. Do you share the sort of same sentiment about Kuemper's game, and what do you think the leash looks like for Kuemper moving forward?
It's a medium leash. It's not a short leash, but Darcy, you're right. Jared Bednar was very much saying Darcy Kuemper is our starter. If he is healthy, he's in the net. But another couple of soft goals, and I think that tune changes, because we saw what Pavel Francouz could do in the conference final against Edmonton. We saw he could step in and play decently well. Neither of these guys has had to play incredibly well during this playoffs, but I don't think there's any question that Darcy Kuemper starts Game 2. And I think it will take a lot for Jared Bednar and his coaching staff to go to Pavel Francouz. The option is there, and they know that, but I don't think it's something that they have a quick trigger on.
So one of the
pretty
things
decent
last night
option to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, one of the things we all had an eye on last night was,
yeah.
We all had an eye on Braden Point last night, Whyno. How would you evaluate his performance?
Slow to start, Mike, but he at one point in the game, he was leading all forwards in ice time. So it wasn't like he was having any more of an adjustment to the altitude and this series than a lot of the other guys. And we saw him skating the day before Game 1 in practice. He was flying around out there, and he had a good game. He's not Braden Point yet. He's not himself where he's the kind of first-line center, difference-maker star yet. But he's shown the capability and flashes of getting to that point. And if Braden Point gets back to being himself in this series, Tampa Bay Lightning are on another level in Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, totally agree there. Great insight, as usual, from Steve Whyno, the national hockey reporter at the Associated Press. You can follow him on Twitter at @SWhyno. Thanks so much for joining us today, Steve. The All 32 has been delivered by DoorDash. You see the promo codes there at the bottom of your screen. DFODD if you're in Canada, DFODD US if you're in the United States. That gets you 25% off and free delivery on your first order. Thanks to Steve. Enjoy the rest of the Stanley Cup Final. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
All right, Mike, time for our daily face-off inbox question of the day, and it surrounds the puck over glass penalty that Steve Whyno mentioned from Pat Maroon. The reaction instantly on social media, what a dumb rule. I hate this rule. What do you think?
Hey, people that hate are the ones that get affected by it negatively. I can't think of a rule that has more of a negative effect to a human being than the puck over the glass, because it feels like your blood just runs cold. Like I've been teed up with that penalty before as a goalie. I've shot it over the glass and gotten it. It sucks. It hurts. It feels terrible. The Avalanche didn't end up scoring on that power play, but my tune has kind of changed on it. I used to think that, you know what, I don't like that it's automatic, that when the puck goes over the glass, it's a penalty. Maybe we should make this discretionary and give the officials latitude to judge if it was on purpose. The more I've thought about that, I was totally wrong, man. This is a black and white rule that if you don't want to put it over the glass and out, put it off the boards, man. Don't use the glass. Like, be a little more careful. It's a skill to keep the puck in play. I understand mistakes happen, but I like it the way it is. How about you?
Yeah, I really like it too. Like, it'd be so easy to defend if every time you got the puck on your stick, you could just throw it out of play. I mean, this forces you to do something skilled with the puck, and I really think that's the way that it should be if your team's in trouble and you're being pressured consistently by the opposition on the forecheck. Like, there should be no easy out, and you'd have to have a 2-minute penalty because that's all teams would do. So I like it. I think it's unfortunate that it happens in big moments, but that's kind of also the point, is you really need to be careful with the puck. You can't throw it away. Yeah. And no one asked me, Mike, but the other decision or rule change that I would make, and speaking of having to make a skill play, is it drives me insane that teams in the NHL are allowed to ice the puck on the penalty kill. You see now in USA Hockey, they've totally changed the rule. You know, young players now are growing up in the U.S. not being able to ice the puck on the penalty kill. It forces you to do something creative, make a skill play, make a hard play to get the puck to the other end of the ice to try and kill time on the penalty. You can't ice the puck when you're at full strength. Why should you suddenly be allowed to while your team's at a disadvantage?
Yeah. Why can't we make hand passes all over the ice? Like, why is that only in the defensive zone? You know, like I'm legitimately wondering
too far.
those things. Oh, come on. See, you're going down your own path. But you know what? To the original question, we had a guy named Jim Hakel in college that he probably put the puck over the glass 5 times a game. He'd get in trouble. He wasn't very mobile, and he'd just hoist that baby right out of there. We don't want to see that. I liked it as a goalie because it got a whistle, but I don't think that's in the spirit of play.
Yeah, not very mobile. That's the perfect way to describe me as a defenseman as well. Let's get to our daily face-off, daily bets segment. Tyler Yaremchuk, we got a double off day in between games here. How are you going to entertain yourself on the betting front? I'm sure you'll find something.
I will find something, and I have. I gave Justin Thomas as my U.S. Open winner pick yesterday. I got another non-NHL play for tonight as well. But first, one of the things I talked about yesterday when we looked at the series prices was I was betting on Tampa Bay because I like the value at plus 150, but I was saving a little bit of money for when they lost Game 1. I thought the odds would shoot to around plus 200, and look at this over at PointsBet Canada. These are the odds here for Game 2 at the top. At the bottom to win the series, plus 230. That is tremendous value. This Lightning team consistently gets better as series goes on. They've lost Game 1 twice already in these playoffs. You're never in trouble till you lose at home. Them losing Game 1 on the road, to me, should not have affected the odds this much. Like I said, I was expecting to get them at plus 190, plus 200, plus 230. I'm licking my chops. I am ready to go. I am all over Tampa Bay to win this series at plus 230. The value is just way too good to pass up. You mentioned back-to-back off days. Tampa Bay, they're going to be underdogs to open up Game 2 on Saturday night. So there's not really a whole heck of a lot else for me to get to, Frank. But what I will say, Steph Curry over 4.5 3-pointers tonight. He didn't hit a single 3 in the last game. Chef Curry is going to be cooking up tonight from 3. I'm going over 4.5.
He's always got the sauce, Chef Curry. I think I saw a stat. The Golden State Warriors had missed 15 consecutive three-pointers at some point in that last game of the NBA Finals. Just an absolutely insane stat. Thank you to Tyler Remchuk for our Daily Faceoff Daily Bet segment brought to you by PointsBet. And that brings us to garbage time with Mike McKenna. Normally, I would cede the floor to you, Mike, but I wanted to give some love to our Hockey Hall of Fame media honorees for this year. As announced a little bit earlier this week, we had our Elmer Ferguson Award winner, Al Morganti, who was known for his work at the Philadelphia Inquirer as a writer. He's been around a long time covering the Philadelphia Flyers on a national perspective as well with ESPN back in the day, National Hockey Night. Mike, I'm sure you would remember that. And still today at NBC Sports Philly. And I had a chance to share the news live with Al Morganti on air on the WIP morning show in Philadelphia earlier this week. And his reaction was just amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I do remember those times with ESPN with Al Morganti when I was younger. And, you know, some of the crew that was there back then, you look at Brian Engblom and Barry Melrose, Al Morganti, and just so many talented people back then before the NHL moved on to other platforms and now repatriated back. So I had a chance to actually be in touch with Morganti earlier this year, and it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. And congrats to him on a well-deserved award. Yeah,
and the other really cool part about it is that the Foster Hewitt Memorial Award winner for excellence in hockey broadcasting is Bill Clement, who was also a big part of the ESPN Hockey Night coverage back in the day, and has called more games on U.S. national television than anyone in history. And to see the connection between these two Philly guys, Bill Clement, of course, winning Stanley Cup with the Flyers, but also to then help mentor Al Morganti through his process as he was transitioning from the written word to broadcast. And he was such a big part of that. Two close friends going to be honored on the same day at the Hockey Hall of Fame media luncheon in November in Toronto. Just super excited for both of them, and extremely well-deserved honors for both.
That's really cool, especially knowing that you've gotten a chance to work with them in the Philly area. And I remember even my first couple of years pro in the ECHL, I saw Bill Clement in an airport, maybe coming home from Christmas break or something. And it just had an awesome conversation. He was genuinely curious about my career as just some plug out of college hockey at the ECHL level. And years later, circling back and kind of reminding him of that conversation, which of course, didn't really remember, but it left a mark on me. It just showed that he treats people well and deserving as well.
Yeah, two really great guys. So congratulations to Al Morganti and Bill Clement, 2022 Hockey Hall of Fame media honorees. Mike, that'll do it for today's edition of the Daily Faceoff Show. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com for all the latest news, insight, and analysis. We've got the Evander Kane story posted there now. Chris Peters did a mailbag. Lots of fresh content coming your way over the next couple days as we get set for Game 2 Saturday night. And we'll be back 12 noon Eastern on Friday. You know where to find us. Subscribe on YouTube. And until then, have a great day, everyone.
Thanks for watching the Daily Faceoff Show.
Make sure you hit subscribe on our YouTube channel to never miss an episode.